Hey you, welcome to Home to Me, a podcast where I pause every 6 episodes to make a Q&A episode about whatever you want to hear. Spoiler alert, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Home to Me. I've been wanting to do an episode like this for a long time because I feel like a common question that always comes up in therapy is how. You learn what's going on, you build a better understanding of what's behind it, and you know where you want to move to, where you want to go, but the big roadblock seems to be the how. And while as a therapist, a very big part of my practice is encouraging autonomy and sovereignty and having full trust in each and every one of my clients, that they know the answer and they can find it when they feel confident and trust themselves enough. In this podcast, I have a little bit more freedom to do it a little bit differently. Sometimes when I'm learning something new, it can be so helpful for me to watch somebody else do it. If someone writes instructions down for me, I can follow the instructions, it's fine. But usually it's a lot easier for me to learn when I'm seeing someone else do it. So I thought, let me do like a practical example of some things I would say in different situations and things I would do. And if you want, and if it applies to you, you can imitate or mimic the exact way that I do it. That way, it takes some of the anxiety out. You get to practice and become more confident, and then take it and make it whatever you need it to be. Use it in a way that works for your life. Change the words, change your phrasing, change the mindset, adapt it to your specific lifestyle. But this might be just an easier way to move into that how part. I like to think about things that I would have found helpful 10 years ago. And this is one of those things. I would have loved to have somebody answer specific questions. How do I have this exact conversation with this person? Please help me. And that's what I'm going to do today. So in this episode, I took 7 of the most common questions that I get from all different kinds of people about how to have these conversations. I'm going to tell you the question. I'm going to go into why it could feel uncomfortable and scary. And then I'm going to give you an exact example of something you could say or do, or a way you could frame your thoughts around that specific question. In the show notes, I'm going to have timestamps and the exact question I look at, as well as the answer, of course. So if you would prefer, you can just fast forward to the one that feels most relevant. These episodes are going to be called Borrow My Voice episodes. And the idea is for it to be a little more instructive and a little less intuitive on the listener side. Today's theme is going to be relationships, obviously, because we're communicating. And also it's the area that I just love working in the most. I also thought this was going to be important because I think at the moment there is so much that I see on social media around politics and human rights and how it's impacting our relationships with the people we love and with the people in our communities. Whether we like it or not, we're going to be having some really difficult, if we're not already, we're going to be having some really difficult conversations with our people. And I think that we're also going to have to learn how to sit in discomfort if we want these relationships to continue behind this current season that I like to call what the fuck is going on season. Like I usually say, take what works for you, take what serves you, and leave the rest. And let's dive in. Topic number 1. How can we communicate? I'm struggling and I don't know how to ask for help. So this can be hard for so many reasons, right? We have shame around needing help. We have pride and ego that comes into asking for help. We also have a deep fear of being a burden sometimes. In America, you live in a community that's quite individualistic, meaning that everything is kind of set up for you to be self-sufficient and do things on your own. Not so much the community-based expectations that everyone's going to show up for each other. So it can be even harder to ask for help in this, the year of our Lord 2025, where there is a giant theme of take care of your fucking self, you moocher, or why should I help you? It's your own fault that you can't do it alone. Also, I did it alone, so what's your problem? I mean, honestly, is it a wonder that we struggle to ask for help? Of course we do. Where is it set up for us that asking for help is fine? But here I am telling you it's fine. So many people come into my sessions and have conversations around this topic of, I'm struggling and I don't know how to ask for help. So let me be the first one to tell you, you are not alone in that at all. Actually, the way that this number 1 is phrased, I'm struggling and I don't know how to ask for help, is exactly how you can communicate that with somebody. I'm struggling and I don't always know how to ask for help. And then follow it up with something like, whatever is relevant to you. I feel overwhelmed and I would love to have an hour of your time to talk it out. Are you available? Something like that. Be straightforward with what you need. People really don't always know the best way to help, especially in an individualistic community. Learning how to help other people isn't necessarily part of our upbringing here. So even if you have people who would desperately want to help and who would love to show up for you, it's a lot easier for them to show up for us if we have a specific need that we can state outright. Then everybody knows what they're committing to, and also everybody knows how to show up for you. Just saying, hey, I'm not okay, is really important and valid, of course, and something that a person that's trained in handling other people's feelings and not feeling flooded by them, like a therapist, is going to be great with, right? If you come into my sessions and you say, hey, I'm not okay, and you can't say anything else, beautiful, okay? No issues. But if you're going to be leaning on friends and family and partners, it can be so helpful to them to understand exactly how they can help you. Not a requirement. I'm not telling you exactly how to do this. You do what you want to do. This is just like a tip. Like I said, this is just like an option of how you can approach it in a way that I found makes it as easy to get what you're looking for as possible. Okay. My best friend in America, actually, she texts me like this sometimes, and I love it. I love that she feels, number 1, that I'm a safe person. I also love that she shares when she's not okay, because sometimes you'll meet up with friends and it's like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later and they tell you something like, oh, I had this hard time, and you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't you let me know? I would have loved to be there for you. So I love when this friend does that, and I think we should all be a little bit more like Lindsay. Okay, number 2, I'm not okay with this dynamic anymore. Something needs to change. So this is a common one too in relationships of all different kinds: romantic, friendships, work relationships, with colleagues and with bosses and with managers and with acquaintances. Oftentimes we are in relationships and the dynamic just doesn't work for us anymore, and we need something to change, and it's hard to figure out how to communicate that. So why it's hard, I think, is because a lot of us have a fear of conflict. We don't want to be seen as difficult. We also maybe have other difficult people in our lives, and we don't always know how they're going to react to this kind of conversation. I think this one can be so difficult for all of us too, because like we said in last week's episode, it's so much easier to mold ourselves into a nice, accommodating person than it is to set a boundary with somebody. It's so easy to just say, it's fine, it's not such a big deal, whatever, I'll just let it slide, this is how they are. I will say a part of that is quite adaptive. I think it's important to see people for who they are, to not expect them to be somebody that they genuinely are just not capable of being. I think there's something to be said for that. And I also think that a lot of people just live in their own worlds and don't always notice what's going on around them. My very strong belief is that relationships always have tension in them. They always have disagreements. They always have 2 or 3 or however many people trying to navigate sharing a space, coming from different backgrounds, having different ideas about things. I think it's an important skill to learn to have these kinds of conversations, because the more you do it, the easier it'll get, and the more comfortable it'll be for everybody to be open and honest with each other. So I'm going to split this into different categories because I think the answer is a little bit different for all of them. For work, instead of saying, I'm not okay with this dynamic anymore, something needs to change, a way to approach this would be saying something like, hey, something feels off with this, and I think we are on 2 different pages with our expectations of each other. This is what I'm noticing, and this is what I would like. How do you see it? That's kind of the framework, I guess, for how I would approach difficult conversations. And to be honest, full disclosure, how I have approached difficult conversations in a work environment. Something doesn't feel right about this, or I think we're on 2 different pages with our expectations for each other. is a really great way to enter into a conversation from a neutral place, but also a direct place. We're not messing around with the words, making it confusing for the other person to understand what we're trying to say. We're coming right at it directly, but in a way that is not at all attacking and not at all preemptively defensive, right? If you are in a more powerful position at your office and you want to talk to somebody who's maybe below you in the hierarchy of your job, you can even start by asking, are you happy with how things are working between us? Even if they say yes, it doesn't mean, okay, conversation over, they said yes, so then I just need to keep quiet. You can still reply with, well, there are some things that I would like to look at. When is a good time for you? You know, in the spirit of communication and relationships, it always feels really helpful to me when I think of the other person as my teammate and this whatever relationship dynamic or relationship struggle we're having as the opposing team or like the enemy or whatever. So I always imagine that the other person and I, or the other people and I, are collaborating on how to solve this problem. I try really hard not to make it like me versus this person, because when that happens, even when I just said that, I notice immediately in my body, I get anxious. I don't like when I'm in a conflict with somebody. In some situations, I don't mind it, but if it's somebody that I care about, or if it's somebody that reminds me of people in childhood that I had a really hard time being open and honest with my feelings, it can be very hard for me to engage in conflict. And what helps me a lot to manage that is to reframe the way I'm thinking about it, as in that this person is not against me. This person is my teammate that I'm going to invite into a conversation around how we can solve this mutual problem. And even if they don't have the same problem, even if they don't see the same problem, I still have that same frame in my mind that whoever they are and me, we're on a team. And if one of us is not okay in the team, it means the whole team is not okay, right? That's my mindset. So maybe that's a South African in me, I don't know. But it's really helpful because then I can look at this person and say, hey, I'm having this issue. It's a mutual issue because we're both in this relationship. Let's sit down and have a conversation about how we can kind of look at this and where we can make some changes, or at least give me your perspective on what's going on just so that I can feel a little bit more at ease. That's the way that I frame it for myself. And it takes away a lot of that anxiety of conflict, because you don't have to be conflict avoidant then. It's not a conflict. It's literally two people collaborating. It's an invitation. That already takes so much of the stress out for me. Okay, for romantic relationships, obviously I would say, what the fuck is wrong with you? Just kidding. Don't say that. With romantic relationships, this is so important in my opinion. Be specific. Be very specific. There is this belief, and I hear it everywhere, and I cannot stress to you enough how much I disagree with this notion. If they wanted to, they would. That statement, if they wanted to, they would. I so strongly disagree with that statement. I don't find that to be true at all. In my experience as a human person and in my experience as a couples and relationship therapist, I don't see that to be true at all. Of course, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Okay? So yes, sometimes if they wanted to, they would. But for that to be your relationship measuring stick, fucking no. In my opinion, no. There are so many other reasons why they don't, that have nothing to do with whether or not they want to. Some people honestly don't know what you need because, surprisingly, nobody taught them how to mind read. I love a fantasy romance just as much as the next red-blooded millennial, okay? But that is not real life. That ability to mind read, to anticipate needs, to figure out what the other person wants, to know exactly how to show up that's going to make that person feel so loved, that expectation in relationships, I have never seen that be a successful strategy. It is a different situation if you've known each other for so many years, if you constantly communicate, and if you have a partner that honestly is quite hypervigilant and can pick up on subtle cues, like, yes, then you can have that. But in general, as a rule of people, and if you're going to use that as a rule to divide people who care from people who don't care, I just don't think that that's wise. I just don't see that working in so many relationships. So I guess I'm going to say advice. It's so strange for that word to come out of my mouth because I never give advice as a therapist. But in this case, my advice would be, when you are sharing this, specifically this, I'm not okay with this dynamic, something needs to change, to be as specific as possible is going to help your partner. Do you know what I see it as? Like for me, I hold all of the knowledge of every single thing that's going to make me happy. I know that about myself. I explore that with myself. I understand what I need in all the aspects relationally to myself. How I would love friends to show up, how I would love my partner to show up. Oh my goodness, sexually. I know exactly the things that I feel are very important to me and all the ways that I feel most loved. I know that about myself. Why on earth would I expect my partner to guess those things when I already know the answer? I just tell them the thing. And I know what you're going to say next because this happens all the time where I have people say, well, if I tell them what to do, they're only doing it because I told them to. They're not doing it because they really mean it. Again, what? Where did you learn that? Even a broken clock is right twice a day, okay? Fine. So sometimes you do have a lazy partner who couldn't be fucking asked and is only doing this shit because you told them to, right? And they're going to stop after a month. Absolutely. But if that's happening, you have bigger relationship issues. Maybe you want to get some external help in that situation because there is a dynamic there that isn't working. But for people who are equally committed to their relationship, it is only ever a beautiful gift to hear from your partner what you want from them and what you need from them. And they are always only too happy to give it to you. In my experience as a couples therapist, I notice this a lot with women knowing exactly what they need and knowing how to feel loved, and husbands who honestly feel so lost because they don't know. And is it frustrating as fuck? Yes. Like, hello, of course. I also am a woman. I get it. It's very fucking frustrating. And does it suck when you see other people getting things in their relationship that you would kill for and your partner just like doesn't get it? Yes, it fucking sucks. And I can't be in a happy marriage with my partner who is so different to how I am, who sees the world so differently, who feels love and shows love so differently than I do. I cannot be in a happy, chill fucking marriage with this dude if I don't tell him exactly what I need, because he will fuck it up. And it's not that he will do nothing. He will do a whole bunch of shit, but he'll do a whole bunch of shit that literally means nothing to me. He'll do a whole bunch of shit that'll make him happy. Now we've been together for, oh my gosh, babe, how long have we been together? I don't know, like 15 years or something. So now he knows, okay? But it's because I've shared it so many fucking times and because we speak about it all the time that he gets it. And I had a choice. It could annoy me to do that. I could every time feel like he doesn't care, he's not listening. But I know that's not true because I know him. I know he is so good. I know he loves me so much. And if you know that about your partner, give them this fucking information, right? Be a team. And again, I want to caveat this by saying, if you genuinely have a partner that doesn't care, or you genuinely have tried and it doesn't feel that they even have any drive to make you feel loved or to take care of you, or that they're listening and taking what you're telling them seriously, that is an issue. Okay, we're going to go get some external help for that piece in your relationship because you don't deserve that. And that is not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about people who like know for sure that their partners are like wanting to be really good at marriage or relationships or whatever. They just don't know fucking how. Anyway, that was a tangent. Sorry about that. In the spirit of being very specific, you will say something like, I don't like how we split the household tasks. Or I would like you to plan date nights once a week at least. Or Mark, if you're listening, like you say you do, that recycling pile is getting mighty high, my guy. One more thread box and there's going to be a fucking avalanche. Can you please take the recycling out? Okay, very specific. Set your partner up for success where you can. Again, caveated. Some relationships suck and some partners do suck. That's very true. And they're lazy and they don't get how important it is to you. Then absolutely, go at them. As you probably noticed, we don't have to always be so serious when we are having serious conversations with people. I know it sounds really strange, but your relationships are in agreement to share at least a part, if not most of your life. That means that you and your teammate, / whichever people or person you're in a relationship with, are on the same team. Okay? And if you've ever played a team sport, it's the best to laugh with your teammates while you're trying to solve a problem or crush an opposing team, aka the problem that you're having or the argument that you're having. Try really hard to bring humor into everything. It doesn't mean that you're making a joke out of it. Obviously, it's serious, but it's so much easier to feel calm and safe when you're able to approach a topic with humor. Okay, next one. I've changed my mind. Oh my goodness. We addressed this in the podcast we had about rules, the rules that we have growing up. I've changed my mind seems to be next to impossible to communicate for a lot of people. There is this pressure to be consistent. There is a fear of disappointing people. And there's also this belief that you should have everything figured out at all times. We need to know everything. And so we make a decision and that's it. We can't go back and change our minds. And that's not true. There's also another piece, I think, in there of ego and pride. If you change your mind, it means you were wrong to start with. Now that I'm saying these things out loud, I also think changing your mind could sometimes feel like you're going against your core values that you thought you had. It can feel like a little identity crisis. Saying one thing or making one commitment or something like that and then changing your mind about it can feel like you are going against your values. So I think for that reason, communicating this to somebody or to people is really difficult. And for this one, I think before you say anything, it might be with getting yourself in a mindset of somebody who thinks that changing their mind is wonderful. So this might seem really strange, but I used to be a person like this. And mine was strongly connected to pride and ego. I never wanted to change my mind because I wanted everybody to think that I already have the answer and that I'm smart enough to know exactly the right thing from the beginning. And I cannot tell you how much this held me back. I did make a podcast episode about school and how this belief held me back a lot in school. What really helped me was reframing my thoughts about that and seeing myself instead as a person who's open and curious, always learning. And once I did that, it took the pride piece and the ego piece and the fear piece out of changing my mind. Now I see it as a sign that I'm always willing to learn and grow, and not a sign that I'm going back on my word or that I'm going against my values. I'm always ready to get new information and I'm always willing to learn and to grow. So before you have this conversation with somebody, that might be worth doing. It might be worth going, okay, I've changed my mind about something. I feel really anxious about it. Let me sit for a second and see where my anxiety is coming from. Why is this so difficult for me to do? And then try to think of yourself instead as a person who thinks changing their mind is wonderful, who values freedom and who values curiosity. That way, even if you get challenged on this, when you do share with somebody, hey, I've changed my mind, it's a value that I have, that I'm always open to new information, which inevitably means that sometimes I'm going to change my mind. And they're like, what the fuck? You can say, I understand why you may be upset. And it's an important value of mine to stay flexible and curious. And after more thought, I don't think this is the right choice or move or decision for me. And I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. That's the way I would share this. After more thought, I don't think this is the right blah, blah, blah for me. Whatever you want to say, choice, move, decision. And I'm going to blah, blah, blah instead. Or I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Or I'm going to take more time to think about it. And if people are upset at you, let them be upset. There's going to be a lot of people that are upset at you throughout your life. And that's okay. It's really okay for other people to have a reaction to something that you do. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean you made a mistake. It doesn't mean you upset them on purpose. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. Let them be upset. It's really hard when people are upset at us. I get it. I also feel upset when others are upset at me. And it's a part of being in relationship with people who are different to you, which we all are. And it's a beautiful tension piece, right? It's just part of it. Be open and honest and trust that you are absolutely allowed to change your mind. Many times in therapy, actually, especially with my long-term clients, I have returned to a topic that we previously talked through, and I've said, hey, I read this article, this research, I spent more time thinking about this, and I want to revisit this with you with this new perspective or with this new knowledge that I have. That's happened plenty of times because I'll think back to something I said to a client or the way that I framed something or the way that something was framed in my brain. And obviously based off of that is how we moved through that session. And I will read something new, or there'll be new research that comes out, or I'll just be like lying awake sometimes. I'll hear something and it'll make me think about a client. And then when I feel like, hold on, I think I missed something, or hey, this is a piece I never considered, or I wonder if I wasn't listening properly and if I was caught up in my own something and I didn't really hear the client. And then I'll go back and I'll say, hey, this is what I've been thinking about. What do you think? How do you receive that? Tell me how you feel. And never once have I had a client be upset at me because I did that. Question number 4, I feel disconnected from you and I don't know how to get us back. So this can be so hard, I think, especially for couples, because it's very vulnerable to admit emotional distance, especially if the other person hasn't noticed it or they aren't naming it. So to be the first person to bring it up can feel quite vulnerable. And I want to say, number 1, make sure you're communicating the correct message. I've had multiple couples say lots of different things to each other, and it's taken me, like a third person in the room, to figure out that they were actually trying to say, I miss you. The message coming out of their mouths didn't sound anything like, I miss you. So if you are irritated that your partner is talking on the phone when they get home, or if they scheduled a game of golf on the first weekend you can spend together, or if they fall asleep 10 minutes into a movie that you've talked about seeing for ages, or they seem happy to just go through the daily motions without really making time to connect or really paying attention to like how connected you are probably irritated because of this thing, because you miss your partner, because you feel disconnected. And I think when we feel that disconnect, that vulnerability that comes from disconnection, and we aren't used to sitting in vulnerability, the first thing that happens is we get a secondary emotion like irritation or anger, because that emotion floods us with power. All of a sudden, we don't feel vulnerable anymore. We feel quite strong. And then we engage from this angry place, and we're trying to tell our partner, hey, I miss you. I wish we could spend more time together. But what comes out of your mouth is, can you just something, or like, why do you always have to blah, blah, blah? Or every time you come home, you blah, blah, blah. You know, that's what we say instead. And our partner then only hears, you suck, or you're doing this wrong. They don't hear the actual message, which is, I miss you. So I think step 1 with this one, I feel disconnected from you, I don't know how to get us back, is to say, what do I actually feel in that disconnection? Do I feel angry? Do I feel irritated? Or do I feel genuinely sad and lonely and I miss them? Because that's the piece you want to share. You want to actually say, hey, I miss you. Or you want to say, I just want you to know that I miss you and I would love for us to have some quality time together. What about blah, blah, blah? And come up with, again, specifics. Come up with how about you and I take 30 minutes every day to catch up on our days at 6 p.m. We can pour a drink, we can sit at the table, and we can just chat for 30 minutes about our day. I really want to connect more with you. I really want to find more times in our week where you and I can connect. That's more going to be a message that's well received. Now, I will say, if you do this with your partner and they continue to be defensive or dismissive about it, that also might be a time where you want to get some outside input. I just want to make sure I'm caveating everything I'm saying so that you don't think I'm giving you relationship advice and then you end up banging your head against the wall because you keep saying I miss you to your partner and they keep ignoring you. You ideally would like your partner to engage with that. Maybe initially they can be defensive. I'm trying my best. I'm so busy. And in that case, we just go back to like, I know, I hear you. We're so busy and we're not seeing each other. And that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not blaming you. I don't want to have a fight. I just want to tell you, hey, I miss you. And I think we should make our time together a priority. Number 5, I am not available for this relationship anymore. Or I am not available for this kind of relationship anymore. So this is hard, I think, in friendships or non-romantic dynamics. Breaking up with somebody is really hard, but breaking up with a family member or a friend or a colleague can feel almost impossible. So feel free to do it passively, by the way, by being less available and learning to say no thank you. However, if you want to be brave and you want to make it direct, here are some things you can say when you don't want to be available for this kind of relationship anymore. I need space from this relationship, please. Or, for our relationship to continue, here are some things I would like to change about it. And then state the things. The end. You know what you need. It's not up for debate. I just wanted to remind you of that. If you would like, you can stay open and curious about the other person's perception of the relationship. Listen to what they have to say and their perspective if you want. But I also want to remind you that you know what you need from relationships. And if you don't feel fulfilled and if it feels like this person continuously crosses your boundary, it's okay to just directly tell them that. And you don't have to let it be open for debate where they're trying to convince you that somehow your needs or your expectations or requirements in the relationship are stupid. That's not up for debate. They can, of course, share their perspective and share how they see it, but it doesn't have to be a debate. You can trust that you know what you need. And I want to tell you, if somebody told me that, if somebody came to me and said, hey, this relationship doesn't feel good anymore, I would want to listen so much more to what's going on for that person. And I would not try to spend a lot of time trying to convince this person that their needs are ridiculous or stupid. So I just want to share that and put that out there, because I think if you are with a person who is open to hearing, that's a good sign. But sometimes people are not open to that. They want to convince you that this is stupid because people don't like change. This question is quite difficult without context, because sometimes people actually suck and you don't want to have relationships with them anymore and they won't change and they don't actually give a fuck. And in that case, I mean, honestly, like, not from my therapist self, but like as a human person, I wouldn't even bother. But sometimes people are stuck in their own patterns or narratives and they honestly don't know how to engage in healthy relationships. Also, sometimes there will just be a permanent mismatch in expectations. And then it's up to you how much tension you can and want to handle, depending on the person. So for this question, I think an overarching theme is that an easier way to navigate wanting to change some relationships or end some relationships is a well-developed self-trust. Because I think that can make a world of difference when you understand yourself and your feelings and you've practiced listening to your intuition and almost building your intuition to be really accurate and good. That can help you decide whether there is a relationship that's worth saving, that's worth exploring, that's worth maybe just setting some boundaries but continuing, or where there's a relationship that genuinely is not going to be good no matter what you do. In this political climate, if you can't tolerate the discomfort of disagreement, set some limits. That's another part of this that I hear a lot of clients come in with is, I want to say this to my parents or to specific family members or friends because of the current political climate. The reason this is in here is because I hear this question often with people who have parents or family members or friends who disagree with them politically, and these people are now having a really, really hard time engaging in relationship when most of the conversation goes to politics, and then it's a fight, and then it's uncomfortable. So if you feel very uncomfortable with disagreeing on politics, if the family isn't the kind of family where you can disagree and then just carry on with your night, but it actually becomes ugly, then I would set some limits. So I'm going to show you how to do that. For example, you can say something like, hey guys, we can discuss apple pie and work when you come over for dinner, but if we move to politics, we're going to cut it short. And that would be really sad because I really want to tell you about my new position and I want to get your amazing apple pie recipe. Limits and boundaries don't have to be harsh or mean. And in fact, sometimes they are a lot more well received when they are shared like that. Framing it like, I'm excited to see you and I really want to make it as wonderful for all of us as possible. Framing it that way instead of, hey, you can't do this and if you do this, you're out, can be both valid. No judgment on the validity of that. Very valid, very valid. I'm just trying to show you a different way to approach it, not saying that your original way is wrong. Okay. It can feel really hard to be kind to somebody or to some people when you know that they are wrong. But this is the difference between being good at relationships and being great at them. There is a relational wisdom when you can place yourself outside of, or like maybe even above, who is right and who is wrong. That is an amazing skill to develop. I can tell you from experience as somebody who never used to be able to do that and now love living in that space. When you can move yourself outside of who is right and who is wrong, relational connection and communication becomes so much easier. You want to have dinner and have your family be excited for your new job, for example, and you love your Aunt Karen's apple pie recipe, but you also know that this part of your family loves Trump and they fucking hate immigrants, okay? You don't like that. You don't agree with that. They make you very uncomfortable. Here are your options, right? You cannot allow them to come over. Absolutely valid. And you don't get to see them. So I don't know how sad you would feel about that, but I imagine they're your family, so maybe a little bit sad. Valid choice. And you kind of lose in one aspect because you don't get to see your family. Option 2, you can let them come over and not set any limits and just suck it up and let them talk about whatever they want. Again, perfectly valid choice, but you have to be fucking nice and pretend that you don't care. And we are trying really hard not to do that anymore, remember, from our last episode. We're trying not to be nice like that. So here's a third option. You can say, hey, we know that we get stuck on this subject, whatever it is. I want my family with me to celebrate this achievement, and I want to use Aunt Karen's apple pie to suck up to my new boss. Please come over and celebrate, and let's pretend for 2 hours that we live in a forest without a democracy, and everybody agrees that we actually all love each other, and that's the most important part. That's how you can set a boundary, right? You can even call it like Walker Island. Okay, imagine your last name is Walker. You can be like, hey, on Saturday, we're going to Walker Island. And you can just make an understanding in your family that when any of you invite the other people to Walker Island or whatever your last name is, island, that is an island where there is no democracy, there's no voting. And on that island, everybody just loves on each other. That's the rule of the island. And if you break the rule, you have to leave the island, unfortunately, kind of like Survivor. You can do something like that. Like you can make it funny and fun, and you can set up friendly, kind limits in your family. Okay, the last one that I'm going to do for today is I'm not okay with jokes that make me the punchline. Whew, the amount of time this one comes up. Why this is hard? Well, of course, we have a fear of being labeled as too sensitive or not fun or a buzzkill. And oh my gosh, how often I hear this from women and from my HSPs, my highly sensitive people. I think teasing might be a love language for boomer dads or for husbands in their 40s and 50s with sons. Honestly, that's, I hear it from your victims, okay? Your teasing victims most of the time. So rein it in. Also, there are family roles. Namely, there's one called the scapegoat. There's also another one called the identified patient that some of us play in the family, and it's really hard to get out of it. And that is also the role where sometimes we become the punchline. So depending on your situation, here are some options. Of course, my favorite go-to, you can use humor. You can say, okay, if you all insist on teasing me, you will all be responsible for my therapy copay and you will be named in my sessions. So here's a hat, pass it around, and if you want to make a joke about me, you have to pay for the session that it's going to take for me to get over it. Okay? $50 is my copay. Please put it in the hat. And all of a sudden, everybody knows that if they want to make jokes about you, they have to pay up. Does it solve the situation? No. But you make some money and it's funny and hopefully it puts you in a less victim-y feeling place and in a little bit more of like a, okay, you guys are really basic, but if you're going to insist on being basic, at least I can make some money off of it. Or if you want to be really cheeky, you can say, my therapist doesn't accept insurance, so that will be $150, please, or stop teasing me. Say something like that. Another funny option is to say something shorter. Thank God I'm here, since you would have nothing else to talk about, obviously. If you want to be more serious about it, go to a person that you trust most, if you have one, and start there. Say something like, hey, I don't know if you notice, but I am the punchline of a lot of jokes. Can you please not engage when that happens? Or you can say something like, okay guys, one more joke at my expense, and then can we please move on to a new topic? If you don't want to go the funny way, those might be two ways that are easy for you to say, maybe hopefully easy for them to hear, and will get your point across. Okay, thirdly, and therapy-wise, this is a no. Okay, I'm going to point that out to you. But human-wise, there are also some options that are maybe a little passive-aggressive. For example, continuously saying, wait, say that again. Wait, what? Say that again. Over and over again as they tell the same joke until it's not funny anymore and everybody feels awkward. Usually, people get the hint. Or you can say, oh my gosh, you are in an intense mood today. Are you okay? You just seem to really want to lean into this being mean thing. Are you sure everything is good? Is there something going on with you that you need to tell us about? Something like that. My husband heard me saying this one out loud, and then he came in and he told me that it sounds, and I quote, unhealed. Okay, imagine. But Mark, one of my clients today told me that sometimes if you want your family to listen, you have to speak their language. And when this client told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is literally the best thing I've heard in the longest of time. So here's your permission to act unhealed if you think that your dysfunctional family will listen, and go off on the passive aggressive with them if that is the only language they speak. I'm not going to judge whether that is a good or bad option, but I'm going to tell you as a human, I low-key love it. So pop off, kings and queens. So there you go. If you have struggles with knowing how to find and use your voice, or practice being kind and not nice, drop into my social media comments or DM me and we can do more of these. Borrow my voice, practice it in your head, and then with someone you trust, and then with the person or people you want to talk to. The more you practice, the more you can change it and make it your own. Thank you so much for being here. As usual, I have a quote for you to take with you. This one is my favorite quote on the history of planet Earth. Okay, that's not exactly true. This is one of my favorite quotes. Okay, first make it exist, then make it good. I love this quote so much. I think I've used it before in a podcast. I must have. But it's so good. So step one, make it exist. Say it once, do it once, think it once, and then it exists. Do any one of those things once, and then all of a sudden it exists. And after it exists, you can practice and you can make it good. Okay? Happy Thursday. I will talk to you guys again next week. Welcome home.